Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Come on in. Welcome to Modern Mentoring. Yes, come on in. I am so excited about tonight's conversation. I'll give it a few minutes to allow all of our guests to show. We are live tonight. Hi, Alicia. Welcome. We are live tonight on LinkedIn. We're also live on YouTube, so welcome to our YouTube viewers. And we're also live on Twitter. So welcome everyone. Hi, Ambrosia. Hello, John Paul. So glad you're able to join us. We're going to give it a few minutes to allow more people to join. Oh, I got hello from San Jose. Hello, Leslie. Welcome. Welcome. I am so excited to have you all join us tonight. Yes, we've got a special guest in the house. Special guest in the house. Hello. How are you all doing? Type it in the chat for me. Are you doing great tonight or today, depending on where you are? I'm so bummed. Polly, I'm so bummed. I need to go to the PDM acceleration call and we miss this one. These sessions are always so uplifting. Thanks for recording. Absolutely. We will make sure it's available right after we end. So you go ahead and do what you have to do, Polly. Then you can catch all of them. Hi, Carol. Hi, Stephanie. So glad you can join. Hi, Deborah. Oh, you looking forward to this? I'm so glad you could join today. You excited for this one, John Paul? You're excited. I'm excited. I'm going to be a student, even though I'm going to be the one facilitating the conversation. Doing good. All right. Long day. I feel the same way. It's been a long day. But you know what? I was looking forward to today, you all, because something about modern mentoring actually gives me energy. Uh, all right, Leslie, looking forward to hearing from Tony. Aren't we all? Don't we miss her too? Hello there. Let's see. Ambrosia, you're feeling encouraged. That's what I want. Hi, Kendall. So good to see you out there. Alicia says she's doing great, preparing dinner over here in Washington and ready to catch these gems. I know that's right. And you know, whenever we talk to Tony, it's full of gems. So let's give it another minute and then I will go ahead and get us started. Someone says modern mentoring gives me oxygen. That just warms my heart. I guess you all know this is my passion project. It's so funny because I tell people all the time, all I'm trying to do with this platform is be the thing I've always wanted, is someone who was willing to share their journey, share their stories, not just the good times, right? You want to hear about the difficult times and how to get through those difficult times. And it's something that I just want to make sure that all of you that are out there in that corporate fight, trying to figure out how to be successful, just have people be willing to share transparently and vulnerably with you. Hello from Tokyo. Welcome, welcome. Oh, I love it. Well, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know we're still going to have people join us, but I want to make sure that we take advantage of all the time that we have together. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you for creating space for us to have this conversation today. For those of you joining for the first time, welcome. Welcome to Modern Mentoring. I'm your host, Lonnie Phillips. And the reason why I created this modern mentoring platform was really, it was a way for me to scale my mentoring efforts. I was starting to do a lot of one-on-ones. People were asking for more and more of my time. And it was one of those things where there were starting to be some common themes in the questions that were coming up. And I was like, let me find a way to actually bring it to a digital platform so more people can benefit from it. But what has been born out of it is it's an opportunity for me to share my network with all of you. And it's been a way that we can share our collective wisdom with one another. And that is what I want this platform to be. I want this platform to be one in which we share openly, vulnerably, and we share where we're having successes, but we also are open to where we have had failures and what did we learn from it. And I want to foster community amongst all of you, because no matter what stage you're in in your career. We can all learn something from one another. Those of you that follow me on social, one of the things you know is social hasn't been that thing that I really grew up on, so I've had to learn it, and I've been leaning into my discomfort. Part of this exercise was me leaning into my discomfort with leveraging LinkedIn Live, and now I'm doing, I can't even believe I'm saying it, YouTube Live and doing it on Twitter. But the thing that I wanted you all to know is I actually have a mentor. She's significantly younger than I am, but she is my mentor. She thinks that's crazy, but I'm like, hey, the mentor needs to be mentored because there's so much for me to learn. And that's what's so incredibly awesome about this village. And I see we had a number of people join. Hi, Brian. Welcome, Christopher, Priscilla, Reggie. All right. Zainab, welcome from Frisco. Don and Alicia. Oh, there she goes. She see Reggie. All right. So I want to go ahead and get started and jump into our conversation for today. And as I've stated, today our subject is around building resilience, everyday advice to thrive in the workplace. And before I bring her on, I want to share with you all why we chose this topic. Tony and I had spoken early on about her joining Modern Mentoring, but we had not collaborated on what the subject will be. And I remember when I presented this to Tony, it's one of the things that I've noticed is a lot of people are struggling right now. And what does that mean? That means some people may have had some disappointments. They may have had some failures. They may have just really gotten confused about what's next. I actually had one lady write me and said she'd been interviewing for jobs, and she said she had been on her 6th interview and had been unsuccessful, and she was losing her confidence. And you may have had a performance discussion, and the performance discussion did not go quite the way you wanted. For those of you that are in an organization where you have business objectives and quotas and all of that, you may have fallen short and your performance review or your connect discussion did not quite go the way you had hoped. These are all things that happen to us, and some of us really struggle when we fall down getting back up. And Tony was like, oh, that's the one for me. Because what people don't tell you is how to pick yourself back up, how to build that resilience. And that is what we're going to talk about today. But before I bring Tony on, let me give you a little bit of a background of Miss Tony. First of all, her bio is so impressive. So I'm not going to give you her whole bio. But here are a couple of words. And I was thinking about how would I describe Tony? So here are a few words that I would use to personally describe Tony. One of the things I've noticed about Tony right away is she's super smart. I also have found Tony to be very inspiring. She's a challenger. I love it because she does not have a hard time challenging people on their thoughts and ideas. I love that about her. I would say she's also a woman for the people. She always wants to see people be successful. I've also found her to be extremely funny, very quick-witted. I love that about her. She's insightful. I've also found her to have a beautiful heart. And more importantly, I've seen her have a more beautiful spirit. But here is a little bit about Tony. Tony actually just left Microsoft. She is really busy now working on her boards, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. But when she was at Microsoft, she was the president of the U.S. Regulated Industries, where she led our U.S. sales strategy for driving digital transformation across our customers and partners within the public sector and commercial regulated industries. She was responsible for about 4,900 sales people within her organization, and she had a budget of about $15 billion. Prior to joining Microsoft, Tony was the president at CGI Federal, where she was responsible for a portfolio of about $1 billion, and she was leading about a 6,600 employee organization in more than 70 countries to deliver greater value to the U.S. government, civilian, defense, and intelligence sector. She sits on 7 boards, but I won't bore you with all 7 boards, but just to name a few. She was recently named to NASDAQ's board. She's also on PNC's Financial Services Group. Some of the fun ones are Johns Hopkins Medical and Thurgood Marshall College Fund. Tony also continues to support the U.S. Peace Corps, where she volunteered for 3 years as a village teacher in Gabon in Central Africa. She has her bachelor's degree in public policy and economics from Princeton University and has received certifications from Wharton Executive Education in New York and the Performance Management Institute. Please join me in welcoming my friend, Tony Townsend. Welcome!
Welcome. Wow. I want to meet
Wow!
him too. I want to meet him too. Sounds
Welcome!
cool.
I am so glad you could join us today, Tony. Thanks for
I am
making
too.
time.
Love it. Love it. Always for you, Lonnie. Always.
Oh, that means so much to me. Well, I mean, when someone hears your bio, I mean, you can't help but be impressed. You lived it. You've been through a lot, a well-lived life, a wonderful professional career. But I want them to know the woman behind the bio. Who are you as the woman?
Oh my
And
God.
who helped shape who you are?
Well, the woman behind the bio. The woman. Whew, that sounds like its own novel somewhere to be written. But let me just shortcut that with I'm the proud daughter of military professional, of a soldier, and an officer, and a gentleman, and a teacher, a school teacher, and a principal, named by President Clinton as the National Distinguished Principal of the Year decades ago. And so I come from a strong civil rights family. Lester Kendall Jackson desegregating all of Gary, Indiana. That's one grandfather. The other grandfather desegregating much of Montgomery, Alabama. So the roots of what have influenced me have been a strong family, military family, 11 moves before I graduated from high school, born in Fort Benning, Georgia, but also 61 years married, parents that are just rock solid, old school, every week a sit rep. If you know military, that means a situational report. I still give my dad every week. And so that's what influenced that influence. And quite frankly, a Christian family that prayed daily over me and continues to pray daily over me, to whom much is given, much is required, has been the mantra of our family, which is a Bible verse in the book of Luke, in the New Testament of the Bible. But it really speaks to when you've been blessed as much as we have as a family, there is no excuse for not being engaged with your community, with your church, with your school, with your jobs, with wonderful sessions like this. There's just no excuse. And in fact, you need to extend even further. So the lady behind all that is part of a 4-generation family. My parents are still living. I have 5 children. I have 8 grandchildren. The 8th born just 2 weeks ago. Yes.
Oh, congrats.
Mr. Jaden came on in a little bit early, the same week I left Microsoft, just a light week.
Wow.
And I'm just beyond words for what a full life I've had and continue to have. And so this family gets together with a weekly Bible study, with the monthly game night, with just think of the extended role that we play in community, in our church, and in our broader efforts to kind of change the globe. So when I think of, I'm from a family of nouns. I always called myself the verb. You know, I've got a general, a teacher, a doctor, a pilot, my brothers. And then there was always Tony. They didn't know what to say. So
they didn't know what to do.
threw a verb out there. They're like, I think she's working hard. I think she's changing the world. She seems to be making money. I mean, whatever it was, they found a verb.
I
And
love
so I
that.
consider myself a verb. A very active verb, sometimes passive, but generally an active verb that is trying to move fluidly and navigate and trying to, quite frankly, engage as broadly as possible so that people are better. They're better.
Wow. Wow. You stand on the shoulders of some incredible giants in your family. Boy, and you are blessed to still have them alive.
I am. I am.
That is awesome. So let's jump into the conversation today. And I think a wonderful way for us to start is, how would you define resilience?
I was excited about this topic. You already said, you gave me a lot of topics to choose from. We narrowed right here, which is one, because I don't think it's talked about a lot. In fact, I think people are left to their own devices to either hide from difficult situations, deny them, compartmentalize them, or really struggle through them versus being very open. And we see people and we listen to a resume like you just read and believe that somehow resilience has not been part of my struggle or my journey, which of course is not accurate at all. The dictionary defines resilience as really three ways: as a capacity to recover quickly. So you fall, you get up, you get pushed, or you're out of your lane and you get back. This idea of recovery. It also talks about just toughness, perseverance, endurance, not about necessarily an event that's happened or a misstep, but fundamentally that life is going to require perseverance.
Yes, it is.
Long suffering sometimes, pushing through. It also talks about this ability to spring back into shape. And I've added to that definition to say spring forward. And as you hear me talk about resilience, you'll hear me talk about those three aspects that are in the dictionary definition, which is that ability after a fall to recover, to persevere all the way through. And that's a full-time job, is perseverance. That's not waiting for something bad to happen. That's learning resilience on an everyday basis. And then when you do have a moment of deep reflection, sometimes that includes regret, sometimes that includes some revelation. How do you spring forward? Not just get back to where you were, but fundamentally leverage that to accelerate what you can do. And so that's how I've defined it. And that's how I kind of assess where I am, that resilience is an ongoing activity, capacity and capability that everyone needs every day, as well as when tough times come upon us.
You actually remind me, I wrote it down, a Japanese proverb that says, resilience is never give up. Fall down 7 times, get up 8. I think that's exactly what you just described. So what do you think the top traits are of someone, people who are resilient? What do you think those top traits are?
I did a little research in preparing, and where I was struck in terms of the research was some work done by Diane Kutu. And she has a body of research called How Resilience Works. And when she talks about the traits, specifically 3 traits that in her work and in her analysis are resonant with individuals who practice resilience, who demonstrate resilience. One of them is the staunch acceptance of reality. It's my favorite. It's the one that says, I'm going to be real with myself, or I'm going to surround myself with people who will be real with me. And you always meet those 2 individuals, one who's just not real with themselves,
right,
and one who never surrounds themselves with people who are real, right? Either way, you get yourself distorted.
That's right.
And if you're not good at one, please do the other. Right?
Please do it.
If you just sort of tell yourself what you want to hear, please surround yourself with some folks who don't do that, right? The cheerleaders we all want, but we need real people. The second one is a deep belief and sort of buttressed by strongly held values that life itself is meaningful, that there is purpose. There's something bigger than our day-to-day. it is difficult to persevere if you're not persevering towards something,
Mhm.
right? So if this is all there is, and my day defines who I am, and there is no meaning beyond what someone else says I can do or I can't, when you're at that shallow, superficial level, it is pretty hard to push through. So
Mhm.
you got to have a deeper sense of why you're here, what you're here
Right.
for. And that's not, I don't mean that to push in one direction in terms of faith or for everyone, it may be different. But I will say, believe in something, have
Got
purpose,
to.
have
To.
purpose. And then finally, this uncanny ability, I love how she says it, uncanny ability to improvise. That's
Mm.
about a little bit of the fluid, the agile way that we roll with the punches. Everybody has that friend who just rolls with the punches. It does not matter what happens,
Yeah.
they just roll with it. They're
Mhm.
not the whiner, the complainer, they're just rolling. Doesn't mean they accept everything. They know how to set boundaries, but assume that life is not going to come in a linear fashion. Assume that your path is going to be circuitous. Assume that there's going to be something that disrupts or interrupts your day and roll with it. And those become the characteristics that people who practice resilience seem to have more often.
So let's see. Let's summarize what we just heard. One is surround yourself, right? And actually, thanks, Reggie, for putting it in the chat for us. Be real with yourself or surround yourself with someone that is real,
Amen.
right?
Mhm.
And I think we need a lot of truth tellers around us as leaders. Even if we're honest with ourselves, I just think it's important for us to surround ourselves with people who will tell us the truth versus always being our cheerleader, as you would say. I also heard you say it's important that you believe in something
Mhm.
bigger than yourself
Yeah.
and to have a sense of purpose and be rooted in some core values, right? And then the best part is around being fluid, right? As things happen, you've just kind of got to roll with the punches,
Mhm.
right? We're going to have to practice our bob and weaving in
Yeah.
life. Because for a lot of people, Tony, do you think this is innate in most of us, or is it something that you really have to really work at and practice over time?
Well, look, I think there's always a nature nurture question here about any leadership skill, right? We always ask, is it born innately in people or is it created? I think sometimes there's a little bit of both. I think grit can be a function of sometimes the lives that we've led. People have learned how to keep going because they've had a
Mhm.
lot to address maybe early on in life.
Mhm.
They've
Mhm.
had some sense of resistance or a
Mm.
path or a challenge. And
Mhm.
so I look at that, when I look at our kids, I look at the kids where school was easy and they really didn't have a challenge, not really through high school, maybe college, kind of hit them, whoops. And then I look at our kids who had to struggle. I
Yeah.
mean, they had to do their homework. They
Right.
had to prepare for a test.
Yeah.
And in some ways, as much as the struggle was there early on, they've got more life skills than some of their siblings because they've had to go through a struggle. So building grit is not the worst thing. Every parent wants their child's life to be a simple walk, a smooth path. We're all trying to clear that path. And yet, I have to say that some of the most amazing people I've met have not had the smoothest path, and they've had to learn that. At the same time, no matter what your path has been,
Mhm.
everyone can improve resilience. Everyone should build that into their leadership toolkit
Mm.
because it's not just about recovery. Everybody's going to have a tough day, a
That's
tough
right.
event, a tough moment, a tough performance review, a job you didn't get, a career moment that didn't go the right way, things you could never plan for. And if it doesn't happen to you professionally, it'll happen to you personally. I don't want to hurt your feelings. Somebody's going to break up with you. Welcome. I know it's hard to believe. It's just deeply shocking to people. Somebody not even going to like you, and
That's
you
so
won't
true.
have done anything. You have no idea.
Right.
There's going to be a need to persevere as part of living. And so I think we can all build those skills as we go.
Mm. Absolutely. So, Tony, I know you have done your fair share of interviewing. What are some of your favorite interview questions to test for resilience?
Well, look, I think one of them that we all tend to use is about what have been the most difficult or the toughest moments in your career. Because you can learn what someone defines as a tough moment. You learn a lot about people and what they think their tough moments were. And it is both reflective of value, what they value, what their experience has been. And then, of course, you follow that with a complimentary question. The compliment question is, and then how did you handle that tough moment? What have you learned from that tough moment? How have you applied those learnings? Like, so you carry the continuum of most difficult to, for some people, from the valley, to the apex, they've got a great story there. I also ask people, getting back to this idea of keeping it real. How do you build teams when you're building a team of your inner circle? What does it mean for people to be in your inner circle? What traits are you looking for? That's when you find out the people who have to have cheerleaders. They got to be loyal. They've got to be aligned, right? They've got to be linear. They've got to all snap in. They've got to stand behind me, and you'll hear those statements. That gives you a quick signal to, there's no diversity in that inner circle. And I don't mean traditional diversity. I mean, you have not encouraged. When people ask me that question, how do I build my inner circle? I build my inner circle with individuals who can get in my face, who I give permission to get right in uncomfortably in my face and keep it real with me. That's part of being in my inner circle. If you can't do that, I love you. Please send me an email, drop me a note, tell me how wonderful I am. Put it on the card. I'm okay with it. I'm going to accept all of it. But the people in my face, they tell me that, but they also translate it into a language I can receive. Nobody wants to just hear you screwed up, you blew it. I mean, we're humans.
Right.
People who love you, they don't talk to you that way, but you can keep it real with somebody and still be respectful and kind and speak to them in their love language. If you know it, you can engage with people. So I don't try to just bring, critics, because critics just throwing stones at you. That's not the inner circle. And some people do build their inner circle that way. They want somebody to just sort of smack them everywhere, and they think that's helpful. It may be helpful for some individuals. It's generally not sustainable. Just not. So I ask people, how do they build their inner circle? What does their inner circle look like? And oftentimes they start to get concerned that I'm talking about diversity of inner circle. I'm actually talking about how that inner circle engages. What are their expectations of the inner circle? So that's another sort of interview question that can really help you learn a little bit about resilience. And then finally, what's the toughest thing that you face that you're still facing? But meaning you're trying to talk about the duration now. This is about perseverance. What's the longest thing you tried to conquer that you're either still working at or it was the longest season of your life? Now you're really starting to get to what does perseverance look like? Sometimes you'll get some answers that you're not really ready for. So I want to prepare you that if you're going to ask questions like that, please don't, get your face right, start to lock in, please. So when you hear something like, I've been fussing with my wife, okay, not where I was going. Thank you so much. But you'll hear some interesting things. But that's where I ask questions on trying to get a sense of endurance and how you operate when you're tired. When you are super fatigued, what does it look like at work with your team? What does it look like when you're out of gas? Because resilience is about when you get out of gas, how do you then rev back up? It isn't about keeping gas in the tank the whole time. That's not realistic. But on those low moments, who do you become? Who do you become?
I love that. You actually have given me a few new questions to add to my portfolio. And I was thinking about what you just said about that inner circle one. Boy, that will tell you a lot about people. But I'm proud to say, I think about my inner circle, and some of them are on this call. They will get in my face and tell me the truth. But there is a fabric of love, unconditional love. Yes, so they do give it to you in a way in which you can hear it. So that was very poignant for me because it was a confirmation that I do have the right people around me. But that's a great point. Um, Here's one, a question from Leslie. How do we respond in times of difficulty? She was just repeating a statement you had. She felt like that was really powerful. Thea wrote, the race to win the gold definitely isn't given to the swift. Thank you for
Mm,
that, Thea. M. Richardson, in those low moments, who do you become? Whew, great thought.
mhm,
I think we all have to pause and think about that.
mm,
In
mm,
those low moments, how do we show up? Right? When you are out of gas, what does that look like?
mm.
Who do you become in those low moments? I love it. So let's get back to what do you think? I know when you think about resilience, there's different types of resilience. So why don't you share with everyone your view on that?
Yeah. So when I think about resilience, and I'm doing my own index of, Tony. Oh, we lost me. Okay, I see me
Sorry,
again.
sorry
That's
about
okay.
that.
I like you, so I'm good with this. But when I think of sort of assessing where I am, and when I ask others, I ask my inner circle to give me this feedback because I'm also trying to check how far am I off in my self-assessment from their assessment. I think
Mhm.
about how am I doing in terms of recovery.
Mm,
So here have been the issues over the last maybe take a time frame and maybe even a career moment. My time at Microsoft, 6.5 years. What were my big recovery moments? How did I handle those? What do I think? What are the people around me that I care about that care about me? What do they think?
yeah.
Um, Recovery from a moment, recovery from a season, a tough quarter, recovery from a tough interaction with a human, recovery from a sense of just the pandemic, the first 6 months of the pandemic. I noticed I am somebody who my favorite season in the entire favorite holiday every year is Thanksgiving.
Mine too.
Favorite hands down holiday. Love the fall. Right now, my house is loaded with candles and pumpkins. It's a little bit embarrassing. Let's keep the camera
Praise.
cut. Yeah, right here. So, and yet I didn't even want to celebrate. When I say celebrate, I didn't want to make the house ready for Thanksgiving last year. That's how I knew that I was exhausted and that I had been giving so much of me in the pandemic through the 24/7 and there was very little left in the tank. I literally told my husband, I don't know if we need to celebrate things. And we're going to celebrate it, but I'm not going to do what I
Right.
normally do. That was my signal. And so I think it's important to know what recovery you've had to go through and how you've handled it and how did you refill the tank and did you address the issue? Did you try to avoid conflict? Because we all know that the avoidance of conflict is not peace. Resolution of conflict is peace.
There
So
you go.
you avoid it, you push it somewhere else, you compartmentalize, and we're very good at it. We've learned it. And yet it'll come back. It'll show up and it shows up harder every time and every moment you keep compartmentalizing. So recovery is one. Perseverance is something I ask myself. I think we're all, for some of our guests here, they were referencing the race isn't given to the swift, that wonderful Bible verse that speaks of the race not being given to the swift, but to the one that endures. And that's actually the prayer I've had over our children because they are at all different stages of the race and they compare each other. Siblings always compare. You love him more. She's smarter. And oh, good. It's a goodie bag culture and everybody gets a goodie bag. And so perseverance has been something that I ask, particularly my husband, my parents, my siblings, people who know me a long time, my old friends. What's perseverance look like? I've been persevering in 2 or 3 areas. One of the areas of perseverance that came forward for me, Lonnie, was after the George Floyd
Oh,
murder.
yes.
I did not realize how exhausted I was
Mhm.
post that in what seemed new to everyone else that I'd been persevering my entire life.
Yeah,
And not to make it about me, because it was much bigger than me, but
absolutely.
having the conversation over and over again of introducing something that had been a way of living and an understanding and an unstated truth and an unstated horror for me, I realized that I've been persevering in microaggression world for a long, long time. And you just place it somewhere and keep going.
Mm.
And so I had to check myself because I was starting to get slightly snarky. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
People were asking for some interaction. And I was like, I am not your Sherpa. I am not going to carry this water for you. You're going to have to learn these issues. I was really pushing back. And some of it was okay, but some of it was a little bit uncharacteristic. And I realized I was exhausted in having that conversation. I was just,
Yes.
and so perseverance is the second part. The last part of this for me that I get most excited about, and where I literally codify this for myself on a annual basis, is where I've had leapfrog moments. Where
Mm.
something that was intended maybe for evil for me or negative has become something super positive. Something
Mm.
that I couldn't do at all and said I never make it, and I am there. I've leveraged the moment, the awkward moment, the total screw up, the whatever it was. It's been now my moment of shining. It's a moment of reckoning, and sometimes it's also about loving folks who aren't so loving.
There you go. Mm-hmm.
Being respectful of folks when you haven't been that respected, about demonstrating the behavior you want and treating people how you want to be treated, not necessarily how they are treating you, and not keeping a record of those wrongs, not keeping that eternal ledger that we all have of, what she said and he did, and I would, all of that. And so I've seen those moments. I remember when I first started CGI Unisys before CGI, many years ago. I joined and there was a conversation going on about the new person. They didn't realize I was the new person because my name is Tony, and in Unisys culture, they assumed that was male. So I joined the back of the room and and I just started asking, I was like, who's coming? Who's the new person? They were like, there is this guy coming, Tony. He was Arthur Anderson. I know he thinks he's all that. He was management consultant. He's going to run our group. And this is ridiculous. And they were going for it. This is pre-Googling people and finding out okay. I was right there with them. I was like, what's he talking about? I was right there with the group. Of course, then they call my name and I have to go from the back group to the front stage. But I learned what they were really thinking about during this moment. And every mistake I had made in prior career life, I really tried to apply to that moment. What I remember when the new person joined and they were so condescending, or they were so pompous, or they were so, I'm going to change the world, like cut it out. And I just started to apply some of those learnings in that moment. And those 5 guys that were really going at it for this new person became my inner circle, and they all got promoted. And we were all very, very close friends. One of them passed and we were all at the funeral. And I was like, you guys hated me when I joined. They were like, we love you. I'm like, no, you didn't. No. But again, leapfrog moments. I've had those, and I look forward, joining the NASDAQ board was a leapfrog moment for me.
Wow.
Yeah, I've
Say
done a
more
lot
about that.
Yeah. I'll tell you that in my mind, I've watched board service, and I've been on many boards, different kinds of boards. And I enjoy all the boards I serve on. Most of them have been a representation of the work that I do. So if I'm in health and life sciences, I'm on the Johns Hopkins board. If I'm higher ed, Thurgood Marshall College Fund. If I'm doing stuff with the government, the Partnership for Public Service, and financial services, PNC Bank, so on and on. I also sit on the United Way board as a trustee. And so I've always known board service of some kind. But I'll tell you, when I got the call about NASDAQ, I actually went to lunch with Adina Friedman, the CEO. When I went to lunch, I was ready to talk about Microsoft's support of NASDAQ. That was the only thing on my mind. I had no idea what the conversation was. Yeah. And she said, we're so thrilled that, to talk about Microsoft, but this lunch is really to talk to you about joining our board. I knew I was leaving Microsoft at that moment, and I felt like, gosh, maybe I need to say something. I wasn't sure, should I? And I mentioned to Adina after some conversation, I said, hey, listen, I'm going to be leaving Microsoft in a few weeks. And so if you want to rescind that offer or whatever. And she said, oh, we're not a brand board. We don't build our board by brand, by companies. We build it by capability and capacity. And so
Mm.
we love that you've done some great work at Microsoft, but we don't want Microsoft, we want you.
Oh,
And for me, obviously it sounds a bit self-serving, it was complimentary beyond words, but it got me past a moment of believing and questioning that my board service was related to my day job, right? And that in my mind, I'm thinking, no, Microsoft, maybe I need to get off all these boards because perhaps that's what they're there, or previous companies. And it was the first time I heard somebody say, we're not a brand board. We want you.
want
You
you?
bring that value. And that was a leapfrog moment for me for some, let's say, demons, imposter theory, and all
Of
those moments
course.
where I felt like I wasn't enough, or perhaps I was just representing, or there was another reason that I was engaging, but that was about me. And
Beautiful.
I learned a lot through that engagement.
I'm sure you did. And thank you for sharing that story because I think you just illuminated for everyone. I don't care how much you accomplish in your life, we all have that self talk. We
Mm.
all still deal with the imposter syndrome, and it's about recovery through that.
Yeah.
And I love that explanation of how you leapfrog through
Yeah.
that. We did have a question in the chat here. I'm trying to keep my eye on it for us. From Andrea Weber. She wants to know, how do you avoid over analyzing or self sabotaging, even how you are performing and interacting with others in the workplace?
That is a phenomenal question, Andrea, because that is, and I'm not going to try to make this gender, because all of us deal with this, but I have
Mhm.
seen in my mentoring that women can go there to a deep level of hyper analysis and significant self sabotage when they're feeling exposed, insecure,
Yeah.
imposter theory, or directly challenged, like criticized when you're with a very critical team or a critical boss. And listen, I have gone to I don't have great um, guidance here as much as I have more confession. Let me tell you what I've done. I've actually set a time frame that I will think about something, and I give myself a time frame. I will literally time it. I'm going to take this weekend and I'm going to put on my robe and I'm going to stay deeply in this topic for this weekend. I'm going to distract myself as best I can, but I'm going to allow myself to let my mind continue to float to this topic this weekend. You got me Saturday and Sunday. Monday morning, we're off. This is off my blotter, off my agenda. And I know that sounds crazy, but something about knowing that I can go there deeply for a period of time relieves my mind from the idea that I can't go there. Like if you take it away from me, it's how I diet. If you don't mention anything to me, I can diet. If you tell me I can't have chocolate, we're going to fight. We're going to just
Because you
don't
want it.
even tell me that because I'm gonna find the chocolate. It's who I am. And so sometimes you have to trick your mind a bit, give yourself time to have the deep dive, but also set a limit. Set a limit. On self-sabotage, I have noticed most people don't know they're self-sabotaging. This is where your inner circle is really important. And you need to have a circle personally and professionally. Because if you're at work self-sabotaging, um, as much as your friends may love you, they're not there. So
Mm,
you may have a wonderful group around you, but if they're not in the arena while you're self sabotage, they can't give you the feedback. They'd love to. They
that's
have
right.
no idea. And how you show up at girls' night is not how you show up on Monday morning. And so
Right.
you need to have inner circles in both. Um, I remember my first self sabotage at Microsoft. I was just absolutely um, sabotaging myself relative to conversations I was having early on at Microsoft of needing an outside in perspective. I mean, I played this narrative so heavy in my head that I was the outside in change agent, that I was truly offending people who had been at Microsoft for a period of time. Like somehow I was going to correct all the wrongs. I mean, I was deep there. And finally, my wonderful chief of staff at the time, Franziska Eckerlin, she pulled me aside and said, "Hey, listen, I know what you're trying to do here. Here's how it's coming off. Here's
Mm,
who's getting offended. Thank goodness I could trust Franz to tell me about myself and give me peripheral vision when I didn't have it.
Right.
And I was on a roll. I was actually probably trying to deflect the fact that I felt like I didn't speak Microsoft 101, that I didn't
Right.
have 20 years. I didn't talk about Office, and we didn't all go to some mountain up on the hill and do some Microsoft moment. I didn't feel a part of the culture. And so I kept playing up my outside in, and I was really sort of hurting myself without realizing. So I say that to say, on the issue of overanalyzing, set a limit. Give yourself time to analyze. To say you're not going to do it is ridiculous. It's not practical. Something happened, it hurt you, it got your attention, you need to put some time to it. But set a limit and maybe give one other person that limit so they can help you monitor and regulate. Like my husband will say, I'm not going to hear that name. We're not going to have that topic.
Mhm.
How's dinner? Like we're going to start let's talk about the kids. Let's do something. And then on self-sabotage, you absolutely have to have people around you, because I have found people to be the most opaque, the most sort of unaware. Situational awareness is lacking when you are self-sabotaging. You
Mm.
don't even know. You don't even know.
Great suggestions, Tony. So I think about those that are earlier in career.
Mhm.
Some of them are really struggling to build resilience. What advice would you have for them?
So look, I think generally pretty early in career, it's really about picking up signal and learning how to see the entire arena, to see the entire chessboard. I liken early in career and a whole career to a chessboard. People
Sure.
say people say things like, I don't want to play politics, and which are fairly naive. It's a fairly naive statement. I understand what people are saying. They're saying I don't want to do things that are not consistent with my values. But human interaction, if nothing else, is like a chessboard. There are pieces, there are placements, there are moves that are being made around you, and you can be aware of them or unaware. Generally, the people who are unaware end up in a front line called pawn, right? Not necessarily the strongest position on chessboard.
Right.
So it isn't about what you're doing, it's about how you're doing. And people hear, if you will, politics as a kind of a bad negative how. I'm saying build navigational skills for your career. There's no way. We talked about that definition of resilience. You talked about
Yeah,
we got to learn our bob and weave, our
that's
agility.
right.
Well, the way you learn agility is to know the board you're on. What
That's right.
role is somebody treating you like a utility player, where they want what you can create, but they're not moving your career, or you're not advancing? Do you see yourself working harder than the person next to you and everybody next to you, and yet you're the person who's sort of the martyr in your team? Like, you've got to see the board. How are these moves happening? So in the first part of your career, I say there's two things you have to do. You've got to build situational awareness. See what's happening in the meeting. When I'll come back to a quick story, but see what's happening around you, and then build your skills strong. The biggest challenge I see is when people are spending too much time understanding the broader environment, but they haven't built their own skills. They haven't worked their own plan. Always
Right.
have a side gig. Always have a side. I always have a side gig. Side gig doesn't mean a different job all the time. It means something else I'm learning. When I started at Microsoft, I said, gosh, AI looks like it might leapfrog. Let me figure out AI. And I wanted to understand the ethics of AI. So I joined the Ether board, which was all about the ethics. There were no other salespeople on the Ether board. I was with philosophers and lawyers. But I'm like, I want to understand. That's my side gig. Everybody needs a side gig. But that means you have your main gig covered. Please don't spend so much time on your
I
side gig if you don't know how to
know.
do your day job.
You got to take care of the day
Like,
job.
can we just do the W-2 job? Can we just do that and then get paid, side gig, and then see the board? See the board, learn, signal, figure out what you're hearing, but you're not hearing. When you listen to somebody speak, what didn't they say? Ask yourself. When you're in a meeting, what wasn't said? Who's
Mhm.
really gaining? Who has influence in that meeting? Because it's never by title.
Mhm.
Look at the people who really are gaining influence. Watch the moves people are making, the lateral moves, the vertical moves. That's called building situational awareness, fluency, and quite frankly, organizational acumen. You do the same for your organization that you do for the marketplace. If you can do it in an organization, you start to watch the market, read about the market that you're in, understand the sector that you're in. What's going on with fintech? What's going on with biotech? What's going on with the consumerism of healthcare? Be fluent in what's happening around you. Probably the most concerning thing is to find somebody who's so brilliant and so narrow, so tunnel, early in career. They tell themselves what they want to hear. They build their own soundtrack. They're in their own echo chamber, and they pretty much think they're pretty fantastic.
Yes.
And you give them that first performance review, and it's a moment. It's a moment. They're like, I've always gotten an A. Like, yeah, you're not in school anymore, sweetheart. Yeah,
There you go.
Welcome. I will tell you that, I played every sport on the planet, I think. My parents deeply into sports. My dad, my coach. When he taught me how to learn, when he taught me a sport, whether it be football, I love them all, football, basketball, soccer. It was always watch off the ball. See, when most people are watching the sport, they're watching the ball, right? They're watching the football, they're watching the soccer ball, they're watching who's handling the ball. But when you really want to learn a sport, you're watching the court, you're watching the field. And when you're watching the field, you see what's happening off the ball. Because, of course, the ball's going to get somewhere. But all the work to get there is happening off the ball. So keep your eye off the ball. Make sense? Okay.
Keep your eye off the ball. Makes sense.
Off the ball.
All right. Last question for you, and then from me, and then we have one from our audience.
Okay.
How can we practice resilience?
So I think about resilience in its different forms and suggest to you that if resilience is about perseverance, as well as recovery, and as well as leapfrog, think about resilience that we practice on a daily basis. How do you get up and prepare for what may come at you that you haven't planned? How do you respond when your calendar changes? How do you respond when the meeting goes long, or you get a client that's unhappy? Like, you prepare yourself through breathing, sometimes meditation. Prepare yourself for the unprepared, right? For the thing you can't predict, and the unpredictable. When you've had a difficult day, it's a perfect time to practice resilience. Take your toughest day during the week, whatever that day was. How'd you recover? Now, there's Merlot. There's all kinds of ways to recover. There's liquid recovery. I do them all, but look back over your last month, your toughest top 3 days. What was your recovery like? How long did it take? Are you still there? Some people have let go of last month. So there's daily. Then there's seasonal. When you're in a challenging season. I remember when the kids were young, just work life, whatever you want to call it, but trying to take care of family. And it wasn't just when the kids were young. When they were in high school and they needed me for a moment, they didn't even need me for a long time, making those moments happen. A new season, a new model being put in at work, a new leader coming in, challenging seasons. So on a seasonal basis, ask yourself what season you're in and start to assess where you are. On a relational basis, who is it that drives you crazy? Who's that individual? Come, we all have that person. Come on. Maybe sometimes we have hundreds of people, whatever. The relational challenge. Like, ask yourself, why does that person drive you crazy? What is it? Where do I stand? Who are the top 3 people I never want to work with again? And why? And are there any relationships that need to be recovered? Not all do. Some run quickly. Run quickly, don't look back. Others, you got to assess, what did I do? What did they do? How do we recover this? Situations happen within a meeting, within a project. There's situational. And then I would say there's something I call intellectual resilience. And that's that ability to push through intellectually difficult topics, right? COVID, how we handle a pandemic, how you handle return to workplace, how do you create an equitable situation? Diversity and inclusion, how do you handle years of systemic racism and yet show up in a court? How do you handle climate change? And how do you get to a point where carbon neutral is just not acceptable? That you actually have to remove carbon emissions. You've got to take it. These are tough, intellectually deep problems.
Yes, they are.
And they don't have superficial answers. They don't have quarterly answers. We're not solving this over an offsite. There's no mountain you can go to get the answer. And you don't put on high tops and get there. It doesn't happen.
Yes.
You got to stay the course. And I've been thinking of these issues for years, and my understanding of them has meandered and grown, I hope, over years. So I think you've got to hold yourself to IQ and EQ.
Yes,
But
right.
IQ is about holding a few topics for the globe, maybe for the planet, that you keep thinking about.
Love that. Oh, very powerful. So, Christopher Koss, we'll take one question because I'm looking at the time and I want to be respectful. He says, you covered playing politics. What advice do you have to young professionals that might be tempted to fall into retaliation when things aren't working out in the way they hope?
So I would start off, thank you, Christopher. I appreciate that. I would start off with check yourself and check your own motivation. This idea that I just do hard work, I do great work, and I should be treated a certain way, and these things should come to me. Check your expectations. Because sometimes, I hate to say it, there's a 4-letter word that rhymes with fit, but stuff happens. It just happens. Timing is up. The company can't afford the next, another promo at this point. Things happen. And I do ask people to just take a moment before it's all about you and ask yourself the broader environmental condition.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? Does it really make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And have you really been offended? Are you deeply sure that this is all about you? And I'm not saying it isn't, because sometimes it is. But retaliation suggests that someone had intent, negative intent. And not to get into the legal definition, but if you're going to retaliate, there's also going to be implications for you. So you're putting a lot on the line. Please make sure it's in the spirit of don't sweat the small stuff. This better be big stuff, like big, directed at you, negative, intended to harm. And I have had some of those situations. I get you. But many of those situations, many times, it's actually not that cut and dry. Yeah. You are swept up into something bigger. It isn't really about you. You've been hurt by it. But everybody gets hurt by something in their career, quite frankly. And then that retaliation, just know that retaliation is a watermark on you as well. People watch how people deal with difficult things. And I always try to figure out what I feel good about this being discussed with my family, particularly with my children, how I'm going to handle it. Sometimes I write an email. Has anybody done this?
And don't send it.
I put like XXX on the CC line. So
then you can just let it go.
But the act of writing it, I'm like, I do a hoofsa at the end of that. Yeah. Sometimes I've written a handwritten note, because you won't write as I generally find for myself. If I'm doing a handwritten note, I'm much more balanced. If it's email, I can go there. I can go to some big. But if you actually script a note to somebody,
really,
you're going to find out that you're a lot more respectful and polite in a note. Very few people can really let people have it in a handwritten note. They really can't. And when you send a handwritten note, you're letting somebody know I took the time to handwrite a note. I have sent probably 10 in my career to fairly senior people at different times.
All right.
At different times. Handwritten.
Okay. Handwritten note.
And at least half of them have said something back to me like, I have never received a handwritten note like this, but it helped me think about me. Like it became a tool for them. Right. But you'll find that you soften your message a bit with the handwritten note. And then finally, I'll just say this. Look, we all have moments of retaliation. In my mental mind, I have had people falling off cliffs during a meeting. As I'm like, if I push just a little bit, they may go straight down, right? But in my mind, I'm still smiling on my little, conference call. I'm like, I could push them down. I really could. How are you? And so we all have those moments where you're ready to push. I go back to whom much is given, much is required. When these jobs that we have, these lives that we have, I've lived around the world. I've been on an equator in a small village. We have so much to be thankful for. At some point, you just do the math and say, There's more on this side of the ledger than that. Let's just keep going. In fact, sometimes when you show love to people who've been super nasty to you, whew, and when it's genuine, I don't mean you're just doing it to heap coals, but genuine. I've seen transformation in the workplace. I've seen transformation in leadership.
Mm.
So that's it's probably not the popular answer, but that would be mine.
Well, Christopher, I hope that answered your question. And Tony, I mean, just incredible wisdom that you have shared with us this evening. I'll give you one moment. Do you have any closing thoughts you want to share before I wrap us up?
First of all, let me tell you how proud I am of you, Lonnie, for what you do for this platform, what modern mentoring means. Mentoring is a loaded word, and people have lots of expectations. And what you're doing and scaling out this conversation means a lot to so many people. And I thank you. I'm proud of you, both as protege and mentor. I think we reverse mentored each other for a while. And I just want to say that on this topic of resilience, please pay this forward. When you see somebody struggling, somebody's in a tough season, in a tough situation, in a tough week, on their worst day, think about what you would like to have happen and be that for someone else on your team, in your friend group, in your non-friend group. Sometimes I just, I buy an extra Starbucks because somebody just looks, the brow is furrowed, and I just say, hey, let's get another venti on the table. Good gracious. They're like, do you know him? I'm like, I don't, but just look at him. Don't you think he needs a venti? Good gracious. It's only $3. Give this man a venti. Sometimes people just need you to allow them to have that moment. And so let's do that coming off this platform. Let's all commit to paying this forward, this amazing conversation, Lonnie, that you've made happen, and so many other great conversations you've made happen. Let's pay this forward and not just soak this in for ourselves.
Oh, I love that. Pay it forward. Those are words to live by. And I think she brings up a great point. If you know someone is struggling, this is going to be available for you to share with anyone. The recording will be available immediately after we're done here. Share it with people you think it will help. That is the only reason why we are doing this, is we're trying to pay it forward. I want to thank you, Tony, for joining me today. I absolutely love and adore you. We miss you at Microsoft, although we know you're still in our life, but we miss you every day. And I just hope you're enjoying your life right now and enjoying the season that you're in. And I want you to know we only want the absolute best for you. And thank you so much for giving your time to this community. And I want to thank you all for joining. I've seen all the comments. Tony, please, we'll make sure you get a chance to review all the comments. People, you've got your friends out here, some new friends out here thanking you for your wisdom, repeating some of the jewels that you dropped today. So please make sure you pay attention to some of those comments when you get a chance. And I want to thank you all for creating space for us to have the conversation today. You are the reason why I create the space to do this. And I will continue to do this if you want it. And so, Tony, for president, by the way, they want you as president. You know where that came from, Reggie. So I just want to thank you all for joining to learn more about Modern Mentoring. You can go to the Modern Mentoring Village on LinkedIn. I want to encourage you all to go to Lonnie Phillips' channel on YouTube, and you'll see all the recorded sessions from the past. And I want to thank you for joining, and I'll see you next time on Modern Mentoring. Thank you, Tony. Thanks, everyone.